So this is just a quick review of some of the integers work that you learned last year. And for those of you that didn't learn integers last year, I'm also going to put together another video that goes into a little bit more detail about how to add and subtract integers. This particular one will go through it pretty quickly. So the first thing that you need to know and remember about integers is that you can look at integers on a number line. And all of the negative integers are to the left of the zero. So all of these are the negative integers. And all of the positive integers are to the right of the zero on a number line. And keep in mind that 0 is neither positive nor negative. And what I like to say sometimes with 0 for me to remember it is I think of 0 as Switzerland. And I know that that seems kind of crazy, but Switzerland is always kind of known as a neutral country. It doesn't really take sides in political debates and things like that. And so I think of 0 as Switzerland because Switzerland is neutral, 0 is neutral. It's neither positive nor negative. And so whenever you think of that then with integers, a negative integer has an opposite that would be a positive integer. So for example, -4 and +4 would be opposites of one another. -8 would be opposite with +8, and so on and so forth. 0, it's debatable. I've seen it actually both ways. So I will accept both answers. If I asked you what the opposite of 0 was, you could say that the opposite of 0 was 0. Or you could say that 0 doesn't have an opposite. So either one of those I will accept because I've actually seen it both ways in some of the readings I've done with integers. So a quick kind of review of adding integers. And again, if you've never done integers before, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this using a number line. But a lot of the students did this last year, and so if you find this review sufficient, great. If you think you need some more review on how to add or subtract integers, then please watch the other video. So when you're adding integers, and I don't like you to memorize rules, so hopefully at this point you kind of have it in your head. But the rule basically is when the signs are the same, you're just going to add the numbers together and keep whatever the sign is. And so if I have a negative plus a negative, I'm going to end up being more negative. If I have a positive plus a positive, I'm going to end up being more positive. So when you add, when the signs are the same, you actually get further from 0. So for example, -4 plus -5. Or I guess down here, -5 plus -4. So you're at -5 and you need to add -4. So they're both negative, so we're just going to add them. So I know that 5 plus 4 is 9, but because these are both negative, I know that this answer is going to be -9. Likewise, -6 plus -8, I know that 6 plus 8 is 14, and so -6 plus -8 must be -14. Now, when you're adding, if the signs are different, it's a little bit trickier because sometimes your answer will be negative and sometimes your answer will be positive. And really that depends on the sign of the larger number. So if you have a positive number, like here, 5, and you're adding a larger negative number, like -8, your answer is actually going to be negative. And so this one is actually what you want to do is you want to think about the difference between the numbers. So what's the difference between 5 and 8? If you were to subtract them, the difference is 3. But because the larger number in this case was negative, this answer is -3. So these two examples at the bottom, 6 plus -10. So if I were to subtract 10 and 6, the difference is 4. And then I just look and I see, well, which one's larger? What's the sign of the larger number? And in this case, the larger number is negative. So my answer is going to be -4. You can also think of this as a number line. If you're sitting at +6 and you're adding -10, and I know it seems weird that when you add, sometimes you actually go to the left on a number line. But when you add a negative, it's like you're losing money or something like that. And so you do go to the left. And so if you were to count on a number line, 6 plus -10, you would end up at -4. If we look at the second example, -12 plus 8, again, we're going to look at the two numbers. The difference between them is 4, and the larger one happens to be negative, and so that answer is actually also -4. Again, you can think of it as a number line. If you were at negative 12 and you added 8, you would end up at negative 4. Subtracting is a little bit more confusing. What you have to do is you have to think of it as adding the opposite. So when I subtract a negative, what I'm actually doing is I'm adding. So for example, if you owed someone money, and they said to you, no, forget it. You don't owe me money anymore. So you owed your mom $5 and they said, don't worry about it. You don't owe me $5 anymore. That's actually like you're gaining money in your pocket. And so it's really like adding. And so for this particular one here, you want to go through and you want to add the opposite. So we're going to change this to an addition sign, and the opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. And so now this question actually becomes negative 3 plus positive 7. And in that case, the difference between them is 4, and the larger number is positive, so it will be positive 4. This next one, we're going to add the opposite. The opposite of positive 9 is negative 9. So when we add 5 plus negative 9, the difference between those numbers is 4, but the larger number is negative, so we're going to end up with negative 4. And finally, we're going to add. Now in this case, there's no sign there, but remember in math, when there's no sign, it's understood to be positive. So the opposite of positive 12 is negative 12. So this has now become 6 plus negative 12. And the difference between those numbers is 6, and the larger one is negative. So we're going to just keep doing that. We're going to add the opposite, and negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. Their difference is 1, and the larger number was negative, so we're going to keep the negative. Here we're going to add the opposite. So negative 6 plus negative 8, that would be negative 14. And likewise, we're going to add the opposite. So negative 5 plus negative 12 is negative 17. Adding and subtracting are quite challenging, and so you have to just take some time to practice, and practice will help you get better at it. So multiplying and dividing, most people find quite easy because they can kind of memorize the rule. But again, be careful with that. Sometimes just memorizing a rule in isolation can get you confused. Because for example, here when you're multiplying, two negative numbers, when you multiply them, you get a positive number. But remember when I just said it on the slide before, if you add two negative numbers, it's still negative. And so it is confusing that sort of multiplying is a little bit different than adding and subtracting. And I have posted a video for you if you're interested at all in learning about why two negative numbers equals a positive number and so on. I've posted another video that you can watch if that interests you at all. So in this particular one, we're basically going to make like a times table chart. And so what we do is typical times table chart, you have your multiplication sign here. So we're going to have a positive number, a negative number, a positive number, a negative number. So if you multiply a positive times a positive, you will get a positive. If you multiply a negative times a positive, you're going to get a negative. If you multiply a positive times a negative, you'll get a negative. And a negative times a negative, you will get a positive. So basically, if the signs are the same, your answer will be positive. And if your signs are different, your answer will be negative. So negative 4 times 2, negative 8. Negative 5 times negative 6 will be positive 30. Negative 8 divided by negative 4 will be positive 2. Now there's another one, and I'm just having trouble bringing it up so that I can get it on the video. So what I'm actually going to do is I'll just start another page. You can only see half of the problem. It is in your notes. So it's negative 8 times 6. So I may have to go back and forth for a second. Negative 8 times 6 divided by negative 4 times negative 3. Now this it says challenge, because what we have to do here is we have to sort of follow Bedmas, and we have to do our multiplying first. So we're going to multiply the top two numbers, we're going to multiply the bottom two numbers, and then we're going to divide. Now this one's an interesting one because our answer is negative. And I knew that ahead of time, and you should know that ahead of time, because if you count how many negative signs are in the problem, there's 1, 2, 3 negative signs in the problem. And so the way multiplication and division works is when you have an odd number of negative signs, your answer will end up being negative. If you have an even number of negative signs, your answer will end up being positive.